I have to do the dosa, of course.
And then we'd like to serve you some chops dry, so we can do mutton fry.
Let's also do the khaima.
What about Naati koli pepper fry?
That sounds interesting. So I think we're all set for our lunch here at Malgudi Mylari Mane. Thank you very much. Wonderful. I think we've got all the dishes that we ordered. Of course, everything centers around this dosa. I did not taste a khaima unde the last time around, and so I said we should have the khaima unde with the saru. And then, of course, the palav. This is a mutton palav. That meat is tender. Tender, juicy and pink. I think also go for that koli khara. Hi folks, this is Kripal Gourmet on the Road and you're watching Food Lovers TV. I hope you're staying safe and strong. So a couple of years ago, we visited this small eatery called Malgudi Mylari Mane, roughly about 40 kilometers from Bengaluru past Nelamangala. We were alerted of the fact that this eatery had just opened and this was right after lockdown. And so they were going through a tough time. So we visited them, tasted what they had to offer. And then subsequently, thanks to the video that we released, I think many of you visited Malgudi Mylari Mane. And 2 years on, I'm told they're doing well. And not only that, they've also opened an outpost here in Koramangala. That's something that I remember. So this place is called Malgudi Mylari Mane, and the Mylari basically owes its allegiance to a very popular dosa that it's inspired by, which is the Mylari Dosae. Namaskara.
Welcome.
Welcome.
How are you?
Fine, sir.
Are you Anil?
No, sir. My name is Anand.
Stephen. The last time all of you were masked when I saw you guys.
Absolutely.
Wonderful. And how's it doing?
It's doing fairly well.
Yeah. What about the dosa man? Basava, ಚೆನ್ನಾಗಿದ್ದೀರಾ? So ನೀವು ಎಲ್ಲಿ ಈಗ? ಇಲ್ಲಿ? ಅಲ್ಲಿ ದೋಸೆ ಯಾರು ಮಾಡೋದು? ರೆಸಿಪಿ ಕೊಟ್ರಾ? You must take a look at the last video that I've done on Malgudi Mylari Mane. This was 2 years ago when they had just opened. So I remember meeting Basava, who has supposedly worked at Vinayaka Mylari in Mysore for a couple of decades. And we were playing this guessing game trying to figure out the ingredients that went into that dosa. So the food is the same.
Food is absolutely the same. So we've brought the highway into the city. It's absolutely the same menu. Nothing added, nothing removed.
From Nelamangala to Koramangala. Of course, the name rhymes.
Koramangala, one reason was because it's a lovely mix of people here. People from all parts of Bangalore, have been coming over the last 2 months since we opened. We find many people coming who don't know what Karnataka home-style food is all about.
I'm sorry, but I'm distracted by the aroma of your green masala. I can smell a bit of that coriander in the air. ಏನು ಆಗ್ತಿದೆ ಅಲ್ಲಿ? Mutton fry, payas soup. So, nimde hesaru Hanumantu. Lakshman. So, the nice thing is that your team is more or less the same.
Exactly the same, sir.
And I think that's a very important part when it comes to especially traditional food. That cooker has gone. Adeno, payava.
Mutton pulav.
Certainly brings back memories. I remember tasting a mutton pulav and a chicken pulav as well.
Right. Rasam for lunch crowd.
For vegetarian food. So
we started this veg mini meals. It has a sambar, it has a rasam, palya, and some.
So people actually come for a vegetarian meal.
People
to
come for
Malgudi Mylari Mane.
So that's absolutely available only for lunch. A very small working lunch. Nothing fancy. They like to pair it with a mutton fry or a chicken curry
Okay. What's in the shaping dishes today?
This is a chicken curry. This is a broiler.
Any Naati koli today?
Naati koli is absolutely there. Mutton chops.
Wonderful.
This is a kal soup.
So the kal soup is available through the day?
Through the day, sir. This is the mutton curry.
Oh, there's a mudde happening here.
This is some meatballs.
Khaima unde. I don't think I tried a khaima unde last
You did,
time.
yes.
So maybe I'll try a khaima unde today.
In the making is chicken pepper dry.
Chicken pepper dry. Well, there's plenty of pepper in the air. Huh? So basically it's a chicken curry pieces that get tossed in some pepper, a lot of green chili, onions, and some soy and some vinegar as well, just to give it a bit of punch. You know pepper?
This is a mutton fry.
Mutton fry. So all mutton that is used here is basically goat meat.
All goat meat. So we try and choose slightly larger animals.
Okay.
So around 10 kgs approximately, so that the meat is not very soft. Because the thing is, in Naati food, diners enjoy a certain amount of bite.
They want a certain chew.
Yes.
And I also have a belief that when you chew on the meat, that meat also rewards you with its juices, with its
absolutely.
masala, with all of that.
We feel that overall, the meat of goat lends more flavor to the gravy compared to the meat of sheep and lamb, which is why we decided to stick to goat.
Baswa to Mylari Dosae. So the secret sauce is that Mylari Dosae is a hit too. So we've had a detailed conversation the last time with Baswa as he was making the Mylari Dosae on some of the components that go into the making of the dosa. So of course, in addition to the rice, in addition to the uddina bele, in addition to things like the avlaki and various other things that go in, there's a lot of speculation about what goes into that Mylari Dosae. Does he talk about ingredients now? But this is a dosa that I remember being extremely fragile to the touch and also on the bite. So if you have that dosa in Mysore, when you place that dosa in your mouth along with that sagu, it's a sort that readily dissolves on your palate. Idu ghee mate enne mix. So the dosa is one thing, but what is also special is the sagu. Allah. So that is the sagu that is right here. Ide ene sagu alli.
Nirulli.
Ah.
This is a secret.
Nirulli is the only thing that he gives away. He says everything else is a secret. But there's some potatoes that go into it. There's some chilies. There's some kadle bele there. Bele haktira solpa okarneyalli. There's some lentils too that go into the seasoning. And then of course the chutney. Chutney li kai alla jasti. Putani haktira. And thanks to the fact that there's a bowl of chutney ready to be ground, we can take a look at what's in there. So it's basically solpa spice irate, green chili in that. And then the sweetness of the coconut that you will taste in that. So having taken a look at what's cooking here in the kitchen, I think it's time to get a table and savor some of the Oota here. The Naati Oota and the dosa here at Malgudi Mylari Mane. Let's go. Well, it's nice to see that the place is buzzing, because being on the highway is one thing, but being in Koramangala in a very competitive environment is quite another. So from what I see, the menu looks quite similar to what we tasted the last time around. There's the palavs, of course, there's the mutton fries, the chicken, the koli khara, some kebabs, etc. But what I'm going to try and do is avoid some of the dishes that I ordered the last time around, because I think the people are the same, the cooks are the same, the team is the same, so I'm sure the tastes too are pretty much the same, although I hear that they've tweaked down, toned down the spice levels a wee bit just to accommodate for Bengaluru's urban palate. So Stephen, I need some help from you when it comes to ordering.
Certainly.
So what I've decided is I'm not going to order most of the dishes that I tried the last time. We will of course make an exception for the palav. The mutton palav you have to taste. After all, this is a place that prides itself on the mutton and they're very particular. So it's only the goat here, not the sheep. I have to do the dosa of course. So we'll do the dosa,
And then we'd like to serve you some chops dry, so we can do mutton fry.
the one that we just saw
Mutton
being made. Let's also do the khaima.
What about Naati koli pepper fry?
Let's do the Naati koli pepper fry. I think that sounds interesting. So I think we're all set for our lunch here at Malgudi Mylari Mane. The last time around, because things were tough and they were going through a very tough time, we did tell them that we were coming in and things like that. But today I just wanted to walk in and get a sense of the place like you would if you were to just walk in. And it's really heartening to see the place buzzing with customers. It's not easy when you make the switch from a highway eatery, because when you're on the highway you have a different mindset. You're driving somewhere to a destination, you're probably taking a break, so you're also perhaps in a different frame of mind. They've been open I think for a couple of months or so. I wanted to give them some time to settle in and see what happens, because sometimes things may not really go to plan. But it's really heartening to see that the place is doing well and that customers seem to have embraced what they do here in Bengaluru too. Hi, how are you?
Finally, I met you.
Thank you. Are you from Koramangala?
Hyderabad.
From Hyderabad. What's your name?
Jajan.
Jagan. Nice to meet you. Happy eating. Very refreshing, I must say. The cucumber, mint, and also some kala namak that I can taste in that.
Already plain dosa.
Thank you very much. Wonderful. I think we've got all the dishes that we ordered. Of course, everything centers around this dosa, which is a very special dosa that's served to you with the coconut chutney and also the sagu. And then we have a few other dishes. Mind you, there's plenty more on the menu here, but I've not ordered most of the dishes I tasted the last time at the Nelamangala, at the highway outlet. So what do we have here? So this is a dry chops. This came highly recommended. This seems to be the chop of a young goat, going by the size of it. And then we have some mutton fry. But this I certainly tasted the last time around, but for some reason I wanted to try it. It's a fried chicken. It's like a chicken kebab that's been tossed in some sauces, some chilies, sesame, etc. It's a sort that is interesting in the manner that it appeals to your taste buds. And then we have the country chicken pepper dry, which is right here. I did not taste a khaima unde the last time around, and so I said we should have the khaima unde with the saru. And then of course the palav. This is a mutton palav. But I think we should make a beginning with that dosa. Get some of that urud benne. They are measured in the quantity of benne that is served on your dosa. So you want to make sure that you spread it as efficiently as you can over your dosa. So this dosa is a dosa that is both flaky and extremely soft on the inside. I can taste the flavor of the butter on my palate. Let's taste it with some of that chutney, with the kai chutney. That's really where the dosa comes alive, because that chutney is spicy. So you've got the fleshy sweetness of the coconut and then the spice of the green chili with plenty of the seasoning from the mustard. Let's taste it now with the sagu. Plenty of onions in there, some carrots as well. So in its consistency, in its texture, it's somewhere between a Bombay sagu and let's say a typical sagu that you will find in a sagu masala dosa. I'm not sure, but perhaps there's also some gram flour that goes in to thicken it. There's definitely a gourd of some kind that goes into that sagu. I find the dosa a tad under seasoned in terms of the salt, but in combination with the chutney and the sagu, it certainly packs a potent punch. Well, if you like things spicy, that chutney certainly, that will compel you to savor it again and again with that dosa. Delicious. The other reason why I'm also making sure I polish off the chutney and the sagu is so that I can make some space on my plate for some of the curries. But I think before that, we should certainly go for that mutton chop. That meat is tender, juicy and pink. My only gripe with it, it gets over rather quickly. That chop is cooked beautifully and that fat is rendered down rather nicely. So when I looked at the portion and I saw only 2 tiny pieces, I was like, well, this will get over in a hurry. But actually, once you're done with a juicy knob of meat, there's plenty else on the bone for you to take a stab at. So I think they deep fry the meat, so therefore the fat too acquires a very gelatinous sort of a texture. So there's a bit of a crunch that you will taste on the outside, but on the inside it's quite gooey, quite jelly-like, the fat. Definitely something to taste when you come here. This mutton chop, dry. Delicious. It's the sort of chop that will have you digging into those crevices on the bone for the little flecks of meat and fat. I think also go for that koli khara. Very Sino-Indian, and I think that's what I said the last time too. You're tasting the full-on assault of the khara pudi, and then the savory, slightly umami, slightly sour hit of some of the sauces. So I think there's also some vinegar that goes in when they toss it, so I can definitely feel a bit of its acidity. And then I guess things like the Szechuan sauce or something of that nature. It's a chicken fry that's tossed in some sauces, almost such that that sauce resembles somewhat of a goju with the onions and plenty of the yellow. The other good thing about this dosa is its texture. That is quite spongy and readily embraces most curries and fries like this koli khara sausu. The koli khara is a bit of a novelty. If you like things which are very spicy with the khara pudi, something that you will enjoy. But I think that chili has certainly got the better of my palate, so I need some of that sagu just to pipe things down. The khaima unde with the saru. Get some of that saru all over that unde, the khaima unde. That's a unde that's rather soft. There's a bit of the pastiness that I decipher that comes from some kadle hittu, at least to the touch. That's what it seems like. Definitely you can taste the texture of the meat because the mince is quite coarse. But you can also somewhere in there also taste a bit of the gram flour that goes in as binder. And therefore the texture is also one that is a bit pasty. So when it comes to khaima undes, people have different ways of binding the meat together. In some cases they use the fat, in some cases they use egg, in some cases they use the kadle hittu or perhaps a combination of all three. Out here one can definitely recognize the gram flour both in its texture and also in a bit of its pasty bite. That saru though is a sort that makes for a terrific partner to that dosae, the Mylari Dosae. I can definitely taste a bit of the lushness that comes from some of the fat, perhaps a combination of the tuppa and the oil that's gone into that dosa. So I mentioned this the last time around as well. So this is a dosa that pays homage to that, I think 80-90-year-old Vinayaka Mylari Dosae of Mysore. So it's a dosa that will remind you of it, but is it the same? Perhaps not quite, but there are many reasons why it may not perhaps be the same. So although the cook is someone who has worked in those kitchens for about 2 decades or so, I think what makes a huge difference also is the environment that it is cooked in. So out there it's cooked on a thick iron hancho over a wood fire. There are dosas that go out by the thousands each day. So I think that too plays a role. Well, I guess even the environment in which that dosa hit to ferments. So this is a dosa that will remind you to a certain extent of it. But I think its role primarily here in the context of this meal is to serve as a willing partner to be dunked into those gravies and curries and fries that you will find on the menu here. And to that extent, it does its job quite well. There's a bit of crispness that you will taste on the bite. And then, of course, the softness of the dosa, which by now has been completely overwhelmed by the rasa. In this case, the rasa of that khaima unde curry. Among the two mutton dishes that I've tried thus far, I think my favorite definitely was that mutton chop. This one is nice, but not really a khaima unde, at least this batch, that will knock your socks off. But in its partnership with the dosa and the saru, does quite well. Well, I've just called for another dosa, but until then we'll taste some of that country chicken pepper fry. So this is basically chicken that's cooked twice over. They first cook it in the curry and then they toss it. They toss it in that kadai, in that pan, with some onion, with some garlic, some curry leaf, and also, of course, tons of pepper. When it comes to country chicken, there will always be a bit of a bite and also some skin, because the skin is where all the flavors lie in the case of the chicken. What I want to get to are those slivers of garlic and onion in that masala. Many a times in a preparation like this, we'll focus on the meat and not too much on the other ingredients on that plate that actually go to flavor that meat. So in my books, when you spot that roasted onion, slightly caramelized, those plump kernels of garlic, well, don't waste them. Plenty of the pepper that I'm tasting also in its grainy texture. There's also a tinge of sweetness that one tastes in that dosa somewhere. And perhaps there's some sugar too that goes in at the very end, which I think also gives that dosa that beautiful golden brown crispness. Time now to taste that mutton fry. I want to get some of that gushy to go with the meat. Definitely a masala that's quite kadak. What I'm tasting in it definitely is more of the punch of the masala, of the spices, like perhaps the hit of the red chili. There's a bit of the freshness that you're also tasting from the coriander, which goes as a garnish. But this is certainly a mutton fry that is quite kadak in its garam masala punch. The meat has just a bit of bite and then is rather soft, and quite easily the sort of texture that slides off the bone. I think all the dishes that I've tasted here, be it the mutton or the chicken, they certainly pick their meat rather well. In terms of the gravy, well, I preferred the green masala here because I thought the green masala was a little more gentler, a little more balanced in its flavors, and also in the manner that it complemented the dosa. I think one more piece of the meat before we go for the palav. And you can see the fat from the meat that's rendered in that fry as that meat has braised for hours with the onions, the chilies and the other spices. Well, time to now taste some of that bisi mutton pulao. Lovely. There's already a piece of meat that's chosen to greet me in the very first spoon. What rice do you use in this?
It's 100% zira.
Zira sambar. It's a little clumpy, right?
Just been removed from dum. It's the fresh batch that we've just made.
Ah, the fresh batch.
So as it stays for some time,
It becomes a little dry. Wonderful. The quality of your meat, the mutton is quite good. That's something that I noticed the last time around as well, and this time too. And now to get to that palav. So this is a palav that is cooked with the jeera sambar rice. I can taste the flavor, the sweet aroma of some of the hard spices. It's interesting. I've tasted this pulao 2 years ago, and as I took that first niwala, that first morsel of the rice, it immediately transported me back to what I thought of this pulao then as well. I still remember also seeing on my biryani plate then some star anise, and one of the flavor notes that I'm tasting right now after that very first morsel of rice is that sweet lilt that comes from star anise. This time though, I'm also tasting a little more pepper in the spicing of that pulao. A very flavorful scoop of rice at that. Let's now taste a bit of the meat. The meat is soft, doesn't have too much of a bite. So what happens in a pulao like this is that as the meat cooks with the rice, it flavors the rice with all its juices. So if you were to taste the meat just by itself, it may not seem too flavorful. So in this sort of a situation, you need to ensure that whenever you reach for a bit of the meat, you also take in that scoop some rice, because you want to reunite the texture of the meat with all its juices that have now been soaked by the rice. That's a delicious pulao. Definitely a little more heavy-handed with the pepper this time around. I can also taste the flavor of some of the cloves in there. That sweet astringency. That's a character of the clove. What's nice here is that you find small pieces of the meat, thereby allowing you to taste a bit of the rice and a bit of the meat in every morsel of that pulao. I think out here they really know how to pick their meat. I'm told when it comes to weekday lunches, they also do a vegetarian meal, and I suspect that's because they're in Koramangala. There are many offices around here. So I guess people don't want their working lunch to be too meaty. So I guess it feels good if you have a vegetarian plate and then you have a side or two of meat. I haven't tasted the vegetarian dishes yet, but if I were you, I would be coming here purely for the non-veg Oota, the non-veg Naati Oota with that dosa. A little raita, some yogurt, some onions, coriander. I can also taste on my palate a bit of the sweetness from the whole spices. That's delicious. When I set out for Malgudi Mylari Mane this afternoon, to be honest, I didn't know what to expect. Of course, I've savored a meal on the highway at Nelamangala, but I was wondering if they would be able to replicate those flavors out here in Koramangala. And having tasted 5 or 6 dishes, I must certainly say that this meal has lived up to what I tasted a couple of years ago. My favorites from the dishes out here, definitely that mutton chopped dry, that pulao too is certainly something to taste, and also that chicken, that Naati koli pepper fry. And of course, taste it all with some curry and that very special Mylari inspired dosa. I hope you've enjoyed this episode of Gourmet on the Road. Until the next time, take care, stay safe, stay strong, and happy eating. So this is also on the menu now?
It's on the menu now.
Yeah.
Koramangala. Just to give the meal a sweet end.
Give the meal a sweet end. This is what? Tuppa Mysore Pak.
We make it through a friend. It's not made in-house, but it's made
I think it suffices to give your meal a sweet end.
Yes.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. Check. Well, that's our bill here at Malgudi Mylari Mane for the dosa, the Naati pepper, the mutton chops dry, the meatball, the mutton palav, the chops, the koli kara single and the Mysore pak. It's 1630 rupees plus tax. If you'd like to support the work that we do at Food Lovers TV, do consider joining our membership community on YouTube by hitting the join button below or on the home page. You could pledge a nominal sum and receive special privileges like behind the scenes footage, shoot updates, access to live Q&As and a lot more. You could support us on our Patreon page as well. For more info, check out the links in the description below. If you like this video, don't forget to subscribe, like, share and leave a comment below. Happy eating!